want to ask you about this. There's this subculture. It's called looksmaxing. It's led by this 20-year-old streamer that's called Clavicular. He has done double jaw surgery. He has height lengthening procedures that he's gone through. Obviously, optimizing for your looks isn't a new thing. For someone that's maybe my age that wants to looksmax without going through these procedures, what is it that you most recommend they do?
So that's a great question. And I kind of tread on this question all the time because people are always working with personal trainers and different forms of bodybuilding coaches and stuff like this because they're trying to look a certain way. You're asking me, so my opinion, if I were to looks max what a human should look like, I look at who are the best performers in the world athletically, because those people are the best examples of what a human should look like because they are expressing the human abilities to the best on the earth. So I don't think that people, and I've been guilty of this for a lot of my young life because I wasn't aware of how biomechanics are more important than necessarily what your muscles look like. But when I think about looks max or looks maxing, I think of sprinters, like the ultimate body type that I would say is as aesthetically proper and athletically correct is somebody like Usain Bolt or all of his cohorts that sprint with him at the Olympics. These guys, their body types are designed for what humans were created around in human evolution, which is sprinting. So the most proper way that we should look should be the best version of what you would look like if you are a great sprinter. Having big biceps and big shoulders and, huge legs and all that does not translate to human performance. Having a huge squat or being able to deadlift 1,000 pounds does not translate to natural human performance. So I allude to the best physical appearance is a sprinter.
So, Mike, if I go up to you and I ask, dude, listen, there's this thing I really want to do. It's called TRT. Really want to get on it. From all your research, everything you looked into, what are the pros, the things I should be looking out for, maybe the long-term implications?
Sure. I mean, TRT has been around for a long time. When you go back 100 years and look at some of the first bodybuilders pre-TRT, they had a very different look than the bodybuilders kind of post-TRT. And I mean, when I was growing up, when people would look at the bodybuilding competitions and the different athletes in different professional sports, a lot of people were convinced that those people were naturally that size, and that they were doing it naturally because their sports are tested, in quotation marks, tested sports. From I have taken every supplement that you can imagine on my journey through football. And a lot of the stuff that we were taking that you could buy at a supplement store, completely legal, was very questionable in how it would affect your hormones, how it would affect your organs, how it would affect your longevity. But we did it in the pursuit of greatness, of what your dreams were. With all those experiences in mind and lots of research surrounding those experiences, I will say that, in my opinion, unless there's money on the table, it's not worth it because you're not, like, what I'll say is that most people that get on TRT and have great results, you end up on TRT forever. And I can say that I've worked with some of the best athletes in the world. I've worked with some of the biggest bodybuilders in bodybuilding history. And I can tell you that once you go on, it becomes part of who you are and it's hard to come off. It becomes kind of like part of your ego. And that is very dangerous because now you're having to take a synthetic compound or a synthetic molecule for the rest of your life that has implications on your longevity and long-term health. In my opinion, I really like, especially having been huge and been small and everything in between, I really like a natural, uh, not overly muscular, developed look. One of the things that I talk about all the time with my wife or some of my close friends is you look at people on Instagram that have fantastic action figure looking physiques. Those people, a lot of them aren't doing anything else. They are taking perfect pictures. They're spending 2, 3, 4 hours a day in training, and their entire identity is built around who Instagram thinks that they are. And that is not, or not only can that be physiologically dangerous because of it could involve TRT, but more than that, it's very psychologically dangerous and spiritually at that level. And I think that the ultimate is to be the best version of who you can be. And if there's money on the table and you got to go get it for your family, then whatever. You got to do what you got to do to go get that for your family. Now, might that come at an expense in longevity? Sure. But you're going to get it for your family, you know? So that's kind of my approach on the topic, if that answers your question.
So on that note, I want you to rank these a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst.
10 being the worst, alcohol is a 10.
Marijuana.
Marijuana is like a 6.
Low sleep.
That's like a 7.
Phone addiction. Dopamine overload. Brain rot.
That's probably like a 9.
And being sedentary.
That's a 10.
Why is alcohol a 10? And why is marijuana 6?
So alcohol is a loaded question because you can have one drink of alcohol and it's not a 10. The problem with accepting alcohol as a regular part of our life is that society has normalized drinking and normalized alcohol. And it's not so much that having one drink of alcohol is going to destroy you, but once you normalize drinking alcohol, like it's a normal part of life, that leads to a lot of other problems. Because if you start drinking regularly and you think it's completely normal to do so, then you're never going to see it as part of the perils of your life. You're going to keep drinking. You're going to think it's completely normal. Like, for example, in my family, I was talking with my mom about this the other day. We grew up drinking at a young age, and we thought that, of course you drink. My dad drinks. My family drinks. My aunts and uncles drink.
It's fun.
It's fun, you know, and I get it. That's why people want to drink, to enjoy themselves. But there's definitely a price to pay in short term, just that's a hangover, but in the long term of thinking that that's a normal thing.
But Mike, I'm 22 years old. I can drink anything I want. But Mike, I'm 22 years old. I drink more than my friends. I wake up. I don't feel hungover. Like, I'm good. So I think you're kind of exaggerating that claim a little bit. Bro, I'm young. Maybe when you get older, it's a problem. But why should I worry about alcohol if I'm 22 years old?
And that's a great way to pose the question. I'll tell you, I can't tell you or show you in 1 minute why you shouldn't be drinking at 22 years old. But I can tell you that if I were to redo my life all over again, I would have never gotten into not just drinking, but a lot of the things that I got into when I was younger because of the ego and not realizing that there's going to be more to live for in the future that you're not accounting for. So when I was 22 years old, I could drink, however many shots of whatever hard liquor. And yeah, I might get a light hangover, maybe not. And I would be able to eat whatever I want and get away with it. But now at 38 years old and with a family, I really wish I wouldn't have done that because I took time off the clock that I'm not going to be able to share now with my family. And that's just pure science. That's if I did not drink, my life would be a higher quality life. And I would probably be able to live a longer life from the damage that I've done to my liver and my kidneys and other organs. That's how I would say it. I would say that if you're not thinking, like when I was 22, I never thought I would even make it to 30 years old. But I'll tell you, the math is that you're probably going to, and you'll probably end up having a family and having kids, and you're going to want to try to stick around for those people. So thinking when you're 22 years old, like, yeah, life is fun, and there's nothing wrong with having fun, but you really got to try to be as mature as you can thinking forward. Am I gonna feel like this when I'm 40, when I have kids? And it's a hard thought to have, but looking back, I really wish I was a lot wiser when I was 22 years old.
But Peter Attia, have you heard of him?
Yeah, he's
Human biologist.
yeah, I see him all the time on Instagram.
So he talks about the four horsemen, which is cardiovascular disease, cancer, neurodegenerative disease, and metabolic disease. How do you think AI and tech is going to reinvent that field so that people can catch on to these things, particularly like neurodegenerative disease, earlier?
So, AI in many facets as it relates to the four horsemen that you just talked about is going to help in diagnostics early. So, for example, they're going to be able to take your blood or take your saliva, be able to process it. They're doing this right now in Russia. They're able to process your RNA and DNA and then only give you the particular, let's call it, components that you need to help fight a particular cancer in your body. So, maybe you have a predisposition to a liver cancer or a prostate cancer. By them detecting this and a computer coming up with the perfect cocktail, they'll be able to immediately help your body kill that cancer and be able to fight against that particular cancer that you're genetically predispositioned to by using a computer to make those calculations. But AI, as it relates to neurodegenerative disease, it will be able to do the same thing. It will be able to take a specimen from the subject and tell the subject what would be the ideal cocktail that they'll have to take in order to mitigate or remove any symptoms that as they relate to that particular neurodegenerative disease.
Bro, back to what you do. You help hundreds, thousands of people heal their injuries. As someone like me, I like to run marathons. I have an Ironman coming up in May. When does an injury become chronic for a lot of people? That's one thing I worry about, and the long-term implications of feeling a little bit of pain when I run. What should we pay attention to and be most focused on to avoid chronic pain?
So when you start to get pain in a given joint, let's say from running or jumping or whatever your sport might be, if you are getting pain in that joint, let's say every time that you do the sport, that's a warning call that something is wrong in the way that you're moving and you have to change the way you're moving to correct it, or it's going to become worse. When it really starts to become chronic is when you've gone many months, the same pain keeps happening, and then you start to feel pain in other places for how you're compensating for that original pain. And that is what we at NeuroReformer try to hone in on and correct, is really address what's the root cause of the pains that these patients are having, not necessarily what's the symptom of the cause, but what caused the actual symptoms themselves. So for example, somebody that might come in with a hamstring injury, okay? They might have a hamstring pull and hamstring pain, but maybe for the months leading up to that hamstring pull, they had a week or they had sprained their ankle. So what happened was after spraining their ankle, they started to change the way that they were moving to try to protect their ankle, but they ended up compromising their hamstring in the process. So we tried to not just focus on one area, whether that be the knee, the hips, the lower back, but we try to treat the area where they're symptomatic and correct the cause of those symptoms.
Hmm. Yeah, and as someone, let's say that doesn't live in Miami or can't attend your private practice, what can they do at home or at the gym to minimize those deficiencies?
So, you know, a lot of the things that we do are really quite simple and they're not very sophisticated in terms of the movement patterns. Really trying to, when you're lifting, like, first of all, we have to differentiate bodybuilding from athletic performance. So if you're an athlete, you don't want to overdevelop your quads. You really want to develop your glutes, your hamstrings, your calves, the plantar of your foot, so that you can propel off of those muscles that you're designed to propel off of. If you're lifting with the upper body, you really want to make sure that you're teaching your body to keep a upright posture while retracting your scapulas whenever you're doing any lifts. What happens is people start to get their ego in the way when they're lifting and they lose proper anatomical position. I would say, if I had to give advice to somebody that doesn't know me, that's on the other side of the world, if you're symptomatic when you're training, you have to try to correct yourself back into what's called anatomical position. So whatever that means,
Big word.
it's a big word,
Anatomical?
anatomical. And so whatever you got to do, whether it's yoga, whether it's Pilates, whether it's proper stretching routine, to try to develop your body to landing naturally in anatomical position when you're training and when you're in athletic movements.
But what about bro lifts?
And that's a great question. So, I mean, I used to be a bro lifter when I was in college, and I didn't really understand how biomechanics affect sport. I would say that most people that are into just straight up bro lifting are compromising their health in long term performance and in long term overall longevity. They are, bro lifting for heavy bench and heavy squat and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't have much of an actual purpose other than developing muscle size and developing definition.
Which is the ultimate mission in life for sure, a lot of us. What do you make of this like this Gen Z obsessive subculture with like, gotta get my 15 minutes of sunlight, my cold plunge, my sauna? It seems like that world, the Huberman-esque, is much more pronounced today. How many of these things should we actually look out for? Someone that may be studying, doesn't have too much time. What do you think will give you the most bang for your buck? Is it the cold plunge, the sauna, sunlight as soon as
So
you
it's
wake up?
funny. That's a loaded question. I was thinking about that today, actually.
Mhm.
A lot of guys, a lot of people wearing the Whoop, a lot of
Yes.
people wearing the Aura Ring, and it becomes just like you said. It's almost like
Cool.
the ring, yeah, almost like a
Yeah.
cult. The Ring, like the movie The Ring.
Yeah.
It's like the ring is controlling them, and and I think about it, and I hear these people talking about their HRT and all of the different or HRV, sorry, and all of the different modalities that are built into these technologies. And I think to myself, like, what if the technology is slightly off and it's not accurate? And now that obsession over that number was for nothing. It didn't even exist because they weren't having any symptom of anything. They were just following along an app that was telling them what's going on in their sleep and things like this. So I think that there's a place for it, but I'm a very skeptical person of a lot of different modalities and stuff that are being introduced rapidly into society, where I take it at face value and I don't take it as like a God's word type of thing. So, when it comes to all of those concepts of like living a life where you need this much sunlight, you need this much sauna, you need this much cold plunge, I don't think that everybody is going to have the same answer. Like, if you have 10 kids, you're not going to have time to do the same thing as somebody who doesn't have any kids. It really depends on what your life goals are. If your life goals are just to take care of you and to focus all your energy into yourself, then yeah, there is a certain way that you can divide your life in order to be able to attain all these things, like an hour every day walking, an hour sunlight and all these things. But I would say it's really custom to the individual and uh, what that person is living for. If your life is built around exclusively your athletic or your physical health, then yeah, there is a certain amount of sunlight that's optimal. Probably the most of the day, if you can spend out in the sun or at least in shade, would be ideal, because that's how we are designed in nature. But as it relates to what would be the best modality, my personal favorite modality to use is hot sauna to exhaustion, to the point where you can't tolerate being in the sauna any longer,
Yeah.
and then going into cold plunge or into cold water, and then trying to repeat that cycle as much as you can. And you can feel the benefit from when you're doing it. You can feel the endorphins going through your body. You can feel your heart working and getting a great benefit out of the modality. But I'll be honest, right now, because of where I am in business and life with my family, I don't have that ability to do that like I was able to before my daughter was born. So right now, that's not my priority. Right now, my priority is my businesses and trying to be the best husband and father that I can be, which, does not involve me going to the sauna for an hour and a half or 2 hours a day. I'm hoping that through my hard work and business development, that I'll be able to buy my freedom so that I can get back to that practice, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think it is? I don't know how much you've looked into sleep. I'm sure that's probably the most important of all the things we mentioned. What can you tell us about sleep? Why young people should get more sleep? What are the implications if we don't get enough sleep?
So sleep is a very, no pun intended, deep topic, because there's a lot of parts of sleep. REM sleep is super important to try to get into every night, at least an hour to 2 hours. What's most important about your sleep is that that's when your body is completely still, and that's when your body gets the best chance to repair injury, to recover from sickness, to recover from surgery. And if you are sick or your health is compromised and you're not sleeping, then you are not going to get better, and you may even start to compromise yourself in other ways outside of your sickness. So, sleep was always very important to me when I was in competition. Sleep now is very important to me. I try to go to sleep around 9, at the latest 10 o'clock, and I try to get at least 8 hours sleep every night. And some days I can't, just because life happens, but sleep is super important. And I would even say that the hours that you sleep are almost more important. So, like, let's say you get 8 hours sleep, you go to bed at 10 a.m. every day, or you get 8 hours sleep and you go to bed at 2 in the morning. It's not the same, because of the way that the sun affects the earth and the way that the moon affects the earth. It's not the same as going to bed when it gets dark. That is a lot healthier and a lot better for your circadian rhythm when you go to sleep at, let's say, 9 o'clock or 8:30 and wake up at 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. with the sun. That's a lot better for our health than staying up until midnight and then waking up at 9 a.m. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So someone that's busy like you doesn't have a lot of time on their hands, but they have an hour and a half. What should they be prioritizing? Let's say they're 35-year-old male, kind of like you. What should they most focus on? Is it cardio? Is it putting on some muscle? Um, where would you pay their focus to?
So, I mean, if you have access, my favorite place to go and train is Tropical Park. Just a giant open space where I can do movement exercise. I can use a track. I can use a turf. Um, and trying to do exercises that involve mostly my own body weight, that I'm going to build up a sweat and get my heart rate going, that I could keep it at around 115 beats per minute for maybe an hour while going through said exercises. I would really, I mean, unless you're getting paid again, I would kind of lean away from heavy lifting. I would more so focus on any lifting and any movements that you do being really, really focused on perfect biomechanics. And the reason why is because if you can lift, let's say 150 pounds in a squat or in a bench press when you're 35 years old and you keep perfect form and never hurt yourself, you could do that possibly when you're 80 years old. But lifting 400-pound bench press when you're 35 doesn't have much point if you're not doing it properly and you're compromising your joints, because that's not going to be sustainable to the age of 80. So anybody that's 35 years old, I would advise try to focus on corrective movements, doing weight training, and really, like, my favorite exercise to do is tempo running, which is just running at around 70% of what you would call your max sprint speed and trying to run maybe 50 yards or 50 meters, doing that over and over and over and over until either your muscles are too sore that you're compromising your ability to run, or you're exhausted cardiovascularly. And, you know, you could do that for half an hour and do that as well with some weight training like I described.
One word. You have to describe these fitness influencers. Andrew Huberman.
Um, Smart, very cerebral. So I like Andrew Huberman. I think that he covers on a lot of good topics. He's very well researched, and he's trying to enlighten people the best he can to, like, you know, their neurological ability and different modalities for, like, what we've talked about, sleep. But yeah, I couldn't really give him a word besides like cerebral, very well researched.
Liver King.
I could say a lot of things. The thing is, you know, I don't really want to shit on the guy. I understand his position, you know. Did you watch his documentary?
No.
So, I mean, his position is kind of back to the pro athlete thing. Like, he's going to he's done what he's done to go get that money for his family. Now, I mean, as it relates to a lot of the stuff he's talked about, is it questionable? For sure. But he's very dedicated. He's very dedicated.
David Goggins.
Inspiring.
Joe Rogan.
Brave.
On that note, what do you think someone like me could be?
I would say, you know, the best advice that I would give to somebody like yourself around your age is try to live a balanced life. And when I say that, it's almost, and it becomes something that we're not haven't been talking about, that I wish I had tapped into when I was your age. And
A balanced life.
like,
What's that mean?
I wish I had
It's not
tapped more into understanding, like, the world's spirituality. I wish I had tapped more into studying and trying to understand um, why we're here, rather than always trying to have a good time, you know? I would be further in life. I would be more successful if I had leaned more into trying to develop my spirit rather than my body. And at your age, I would really like, one of the best practices that I enjoy in my life is yoga, and pairing that with meditation. And it doesn't sound fun. I know it sounds kind of lame, but when you get to know yourself and you really get to know your body and yourself, that's when you get to be the best version of yourself. And unless you can get there, I don't think that you can express why you're here in life to the best of your ability.
What does it mean to know yourself?
To know yourself is trying to grasp what your purpose of life is. And so, less about knowing, like, what to eat to grow, less about knowing, like, what you like to do to have fun, and more so trying to lean into why you were born and what your purpose in life is. If you can nail down what your purpose is, then it's easy to get up every day and go and get it, go and do it. If you're born and you're living life without purpose, then you don't really know yourself. And it's hard to go through life that way because you're not going to get the most out of why you're here. And so that's what I would say. Knowing yourself is knowing what your purpose is to the game that we live in, to this world that we're in.
On that note, as someone that has professional ambitions, you tried out for an NFL team, you dedicated your life to helping other people. Someone that's young, that's maybe in their 20s, that's watching, how should they balance or frame self-development and self-love? And there is, I think, a crisis for faith and kind of a misunderstanding of what masculinity is. What does that look like, at least for you? And the audience could come up with their own interpretation of what true masculinity is. But for you, what's that mean to be a...
So what is true masculinity mean to me, or what is self-care
and self-development?
Self-development. You want me to start there?
Yeah.
So again, it's very custom to the individual. When it comes to self-care, I like to think to myself that I'm going to do one thing every day to try to extend my life or extend my time here. As it relates to self-development, I mean, I'm far into my career now and I'm managing many things. I really, every day, I make a list of 3 main things professionally that I have to get done. I make one item of self-care that I have to get done every day. Now, that sounds like it's weighed 3 to 1, but those 3 things I'm doing professionally that I get done kind of just happen throughout my day. That self-care thing, I have to consciously go and pursue to do it. Because obviously you got a work day, right? So you can get things done during your work day. I wake up in the morning and I meditate on those 3 things that I have to do every day. And then the self-care thing, I add into my meditation as one thing that I got to get done before the end of the day, whether that be going for a jog, whether that be going to the sauna, whether that be being conscious of what I eat that night, whatever that might be. That is how I try to do it. In the morning, right when I wake up, I meditate on those things so that the next day I have a new list. Maybe it's the same self-care activity, but I have a new list of things because I did the 3 things that I had to do for my professional development the prior day.
Yeah, understood. And that kind of goes back to the balance thing I think you were talking about, making that space for you. But it seems like taking care of yourself, in the true sense of the word, means doing something that will further that spiritual component.
Yeah, and when we talk about self-care, like maybe people call it more like self-love. I see people, post about self-love and then they're like at a buffet or whatever. They're just out smashing food that's...
Yeah, but it is hard. Like, take a guy like an Elon Musk, probably obsessive, probably very irritable, has an element of social autism, and that does great in business. It might, though, affect certain relationships in his life. So they are, in many ways, 2 opposing things. How do you kind of tame your ambition when you're with your family, and how do you bring that kind of inner monster? Because the fear of insufficiency, I think, is a great driver for young people and get you really far. But long term, it does kind of screw with you, I think, a little bit. Your self-esteem, etc.
So I would say, I'm only human in the sense that when I'm with my family, I probably have my phone with me a lot of the time. And because I'm the primary caregiver or primary producer, I should say, for my family, I have to stay on top of my businesses. So, my phone will ring all the way from 8 in the morning to 10 o'clock p.m. at night, and I'll tend to it. When I'm eating dinner with my wife, I don't tend to my phone. When I'm reading books to my daughter, I don't tend to my phone. But most of the time I'm guilty, just like a lot of people, of not being able to put away my work when I'm at home. So it is part of the drive that I'm trying to pursue my freedom. I'm trying to free myself from, the slavery of the matrix that we live in. Um, uh, there is a time, or I should say, there's a place that I want to get to where I don't have a phone anymore. Like that is freedom. Freedom is when you no longer need a phone because you don't need it to pay for anything. You can just maybe carry your debit card with you. You don't need to talk to anybody because you're already free. That is what my pursuit is in life, because that will be when I have won against the matrix.
I like the word, the matrix, the truest sense of the word. What do you think, and this is I want to finish on this. What do you think is one of those things that in 10, 20 years, we will look back on and say, wow, I can't believe how controlled we were by that thing? Is it phone addiction? Is it screen time that young people are spending on their phone? Is it, um, is it media? What do you think we'll look back on and kind of laugh at from how ridiculous it all seemed?
You know, I mean, I think we're going through it right now. I don't want to get too politically bound up. I'll answer the question two ways. So politically, I think there was a couple of years there where, and I'm not a leftist or a rightist. I'm very centrist, but there was a lot of things that were being propagated into mainstream culture through the powers that be that were very detrimental to human existence in the long run, and very detrimental to reproduction of humans in the long run. And I think that they were really trying to cram that stuff down our throat for a few years there, and it failed. And I think that we're starting to get a rebound effect where now we're swinging in the other direction completely, which isn't necessarily a good thing either. But um, people are really going to be looking at some of the times that we spent under a, let's call it, a more leftist socialist ideal that we were living in America. And people are, I mean, we're already starting to look at it, and some of the things were a little bit extreme. Um, Now, as it relates to how our world will be different in 10 years, all that we're doing right now will be telling robots to set up and do for us, unfortunately and fortunately. But I don't think we're even going to be in the same world. I think that in 10 years, we're going to be looking at money completely differently. I think that will solve a lot of the poverty crisis. I think that we'll be under a form of slavery, like an oligarchy, a technocracy that is still going to be super prevalent and overpowering that we have no chance to fight against. But like the system state will be run, in my opinion, it'll look something like the robots from Terminator will be what police officers are like, you know? And everything will be centrally controlled, unfortunately, by some powers that be. And we're going to be looking back at, hey, remember when humans were police officers? And we'll be like, wow, that was weird. And we'll be, hey, remember when you used to drive a car? And people will be like, no way, you drove cars? That was weird. Like all that stuff, I think is where the future is going. And it's going to come with, again, I said earlier in the conversation, AI is going to be fantastic. It's not going to be all good, but it's not going to be all bad either. It's going to come with bad, and it's going to do a lot of good. I think the quality and standard of life is going to be elevated for the poor, which is great. But I do think that the macro control of the guys at the top is going to be even stronger. And through cell phones, they're still going to be here. Cell phones, in my opinion, will still be here. Maybe it'll even be implanted into you, for some people anyway. And I think that there will be a lot more central control over the minds of the masses. And it's going to be up to a few people to try to keep people at a baseline to remind people like, hey, that we're being controlled. And hopefully that keeps level heads from the people that go completely into the system and people that are completely out of the system. Somewhere in between, I'm hoping that, like, I personally, I think cell phones are great. I think cell phones are like a sword.
Yeah.
If you didn't know how to use a sword in 1500 AD, you were screwed because somebody would just rob you. But if you did everything with the sword, you were also screwed because people would just kill you. So you have to know how to use one. Otherwise, the world will control you. But you also don't want to live by it because then the world will also control you.
Yeah. I hope Peter Attia's listening right now. Say, like, thank you, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Great chat.